الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره نتوب إليه نعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا ما يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Dear brothers and sisters, I'd like to tell us all a story. And it encompasses several different elements, one of which is for us to ask ourselves, do we suffer from a certain moral apathy? Do we see things take place that should shock, and not just shock, but should almost bring us to tears? And are we able to walk right through those things with having barely a crease in our day? Also, the study of history. This combines with our lack of unity. Frequently it's asked, why are the Muslims so ununified? Why do we lack unity? Why are we so quick to come together on Friday, come together another Friday, do it 4 times in a month, and never know anything about one another? This doesn't make a community. It makes people who come together on Friday. Moral apathy, lack of unity, a lack of understanding history kind of combine to answer those same questions. But I'd like to explain these things or approach these things through something very important to all of us, and that's our women, the Muslim sister. Many of us in the Masjid and who are Muslims, we were born in the wilderness of North America. We were born far away from any Islamic teachings or understandings. And those of us who lived in larger cities, we got bits and pieces that came in through the Nation of Islam. But we were not born as many of you brothers and sisters were in Islamic countries and families, where you didn't just learn Islam from someone teaching you, it was a part of the structure of the household. It was your grandfather and grandmother. It was pictures of their grandfathers and grandmothers. It was your father from the first thing you remembered, showing you how to sit down next to him and make salat, sometimes even before you could walk. It was an ingrained part of your structure. For many of us, we learned our human associations, physical and emotional, on the streets of Detroit, Pittsburgh, New Orleans, Baltimore, and we absorb those things, good and bad, from that surrounding. One of the stories I'd like to convey is something that's often not understood, and that is what slavery actually took away. When they brought the slaves over in the Middle Passage, yes, they enslaved them, but they did something even more insidious that affects many of us even today. They destroyed the understanding of what a mother was. They destroyed the understanding of what a father was. They destroyed the understanding of what a family was, what children were. When you sell children away and the mother didn't know they're going to be there tomorrow or in 15 minutes, how does she become a mother? When you take a woman and sell her away from her husband or molest her in front of his eyes, how does she become a wife? Something even more. Incest and homosexuality. I'll mention those things quickly and move on. That was as large a part of the plantation life and slavery as was cotton. A complete destruction and breakdown of every human aspect that had existed for human beings for thousands of years, no matter what culture they were in. Brothers and sisters, I mention these things because Islam came along and gave us back things that no reparation ever could. They don't have enough money. Not if they took the money of China and all of its tea and rice. They could never replace those things with reparations. The reparations that we got came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam came along and re-taught us things that we had never been taught directly about women, what a woman was. Islam taught us right away, even before many of us understood that. Many of us knew that in some sense. Who's the first teacher? Your mother. She doesn't just teach you A, B, C, D. When the father's key hits the door, how does your mother respond? Is she happy and relieved that her husband is home? Or is she rushed and pushing things around because she knows something isn't right? We got a problem here. The child learns this right away, what that key in the door means, what this heavier voice means, what this taller person means. How do you respond? All these things are encompassed in our women. Now we see that Islam is under a frontal assault. They're assaulting us everywhere. At the masjids, in our schools, travel. Doesn't make any difference if you're from a particular country. They're stopping everybody, detaining many people. The principal ones that they are directing their venom against are our sisters. Their hijabs bother them. The reason I cite history is because maybe we don't notice, or we just think it's part of the package. Their hijabs, their Islamic dress infuriates them. We had a sister have a problem walking into a restaurant, trying to have a dinner in a restaurant, and they broke all the rules and claimed that these were the rules. They told her she couldn't stay there with her hijab. It was a hijab that upset them so. Now, we need to understand history to understand why this is so. When I was growing up, I'm in the 60s, when I was growing up, women were dressed very modestly. You went to church, no short skirts. You went to church, big hats, sometimes gloves. You go out on a date, even the teenage girls, skirts down to their calves, long sleeve sweaters, sometimes covered in it. You never saw what they call cleavage. All right? This was not that many years ago. But it might interest to know that Pope Clement the 12th in 1738, he had a problem with something, and the problem he was having was with Freemasons. We're not talking about Prince Hall Masons, African American Masons who are in your family. But the Masons had come up with an idea that came back to the Catholic Church. And that idea was, we cannot destroy the Catholic Church the way we want to, but what we can destroy is the morality of the women who attend the church. Ayub Saladin said that if you want to destroy a nation without warfare, destroy its women, the morality of its women. 1825, Pope Leo the 12th had the same problem. They began to realize there were certain practices coming into the church with the women. They had to order the women to dress modestly. And the priests began to wonder, where is this coming from all of a sudden? Brothers and sisters, during the 1920s, for those of you who study these periods, you begin to notice the skirts shortening. Sleeves up to here, sleeves up to here. Skirts above the knees, cleavage coming in. The bathing suits got less and less, skimpier and skimpier. This was not organic. This fashion that we call fashion was not an organic movement. Coco Chanel and others were associated with Masonry, Theosophy. They wanted to destroy the cultural attachment of women to modesty. Brothers, there are always books that I ramble and suggest, and one of those is Propaganda by Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays began to create what we call advertising. But he made certain things that were never put together in a package. Bacon and eggs, women smoking. Women, when I was young, I never saw anyone in my family or the woman initially smoke. But they began to smoke. In the 30s, 40s, women did not smoke. But they began to put up billboards showing all the beautiful actresses smoking. They wanted women to smoke. They wanted women to wear these newer fashions, shorter fashions. Now you see young girls going to high school, dressed in fashions that many of us 50, 60 could tell you categorically only girls who were selling themselves on the streets wore fashions like that. And even then, in many cases, they were more modest than they are for the high school girls today. So when our sisters walk in places, and I've had women tell me this, and maybe many of you have heard the same thing, they have told me, I think that the Muslim women look so beautiful when they walk in here like that. I believe that there's something in the back of their minds that say that's the way it's supposed to be. High-heeled shoes were a disaster for the backs and knees for the women who wore them. All the colognes, perfumes, facial makeups that damaged the skin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came back in and he taught us once again what it was to be a father. We're supposed to be the protectors of the women. It was destroyed during slavery. Now, brothers and sisters, something else that many of us know and some of us don't know. Greatest blessing that you can have on earth, it's not money. We already see that anybody can have money. Not being president of the United States. We know now anybody can be president of the United States. We are told the greatest blessing that you can have on this planet is a pious wife. A pious wife. A woman who will wake you up to make prayers with you. A woman who will look at you with respect as her imam. History is a startling thing. One of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not deprive us of were master teachers to make sure that we did not forget certain things. And one of the master teachers was John Henry Clark. I'd like to read a quote by him. History is not everything, but it is a starting point. History is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is a compass they use to find themselves on the map of human geography. It tells them where they are, but more importantly, what they must be. One of the things I think that hurts our unity is the lack of history. We don't know anything about one another, but in many cases, we don't teach our children anything about our grandparents and their grandparents. I talked to my brothers and sisters from Pakistan, and I asked them, do you tell your children about their great-great-grandparents' struggles with the British? Not really. Do you tell your children about what happened in Malaysia? No. I had a brother not too long ago who went to Australia. He had a wonderful vacation. I asked him, when you took your family, did you tell them about the genocide perpetrated by the Australians against the Aborigines? These things tie together, brothers. When they shot Amadou Diallo, shot at him 41 times and blew his body apart while he was selling cassette tapes, while they killed Freddie Gray trying to sell cigarettes. When we heard these things as Muslims, how did it make us feel? Did it make us feel anything at all? Did it even put one crease in our day? Did we note it as a news item and walk through it? Did we write a letter to our congressman? Did we write a letter to the editor? Did we do anything? Amadou Diallo was a Muslim. Freddie Gray wasn't. These situations, brothers, when we talk about Australia, it's not a separate situation, because the same ones who perpetrated genocide against the Australians and the Tasmanians were the same ones here. The Australians would leave their churches, roll down their sleeves. They were too gentle to roll up their sleeves in a church service. After the service, they'd roll their sleeves down, walk out, take their rifles, and shoot as many Aborigines as they could, and applaud each other for their marksmanship. In the United States, the Christians would leave their churches, roll down their sleeves, take off their jackets and hang them on a tree, and lynch their fellow Christians, their fellow Americans, for the color of their skin. Do our children know these things? Or do they think that terrorism started on 9/11? 15 million butchered in the Congo. We had teachers who taught us these things. 600 years ago, a scholar of Timbuktu said, "Whoever does not inform his children of his grandparents has destroyed his child, marred his descendants, and injured his offspring to the day he dies." You cannot send people into the world not knowing who and what they are. Whoever does not make use of his ancestry has muddled his reason. Whoever is unconcerned with his lineage has lost his mind. Whoever neglects his origins, his stupidity has become critical. Whoever is unaware of his ancestry, his incompetence has become immense. Whoever is ignorant of his roots, his intellect has vanished. Whoever does not know his place of origin, his honor has collapsed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought us together as the most unique religious or spiritual community on earth. Nothing like it in Christianity, nothing like it in Judaism, nothing like it in Catholicism. You come to a mosque and you have all these different people there. But we have a tendency to reduce all this rainbow of peoples into African, African American. They're not African. Do they come from the Ivory Coast? Find out where your brother comes from. Do they come from Gambia? Do they come from Senegal? Do they come from South Africa? Do they come from the Congo regions of the Great Lakes area? They're not Africans. The history of Somalia and Italy is a history every Muslim child should know. How can they know about 9/11 and not know about Mussolini going into Somalia, in Ethiopia, into Libya? How can we let our children know these things and not know the other side of the coin? So history becomes very important. This attack on Muslim women has an origin. It began several hundred years ago, because fashion is not just a matter of dress. Fashion is a matter of access. Fashion is a matter of money. This cannot catch on with women dressing modestly. Numerous times, and maybe you have heard the same, as I just said, women have said they look at these women so wonderfully dressed, almost floating into places in many cases. Heads covered, beautifully attired, and they walk in with skirts higher than they are comfortable with. But it's fashion. It's fashion. It's advertising. Brothers and sisters, I always try and give some kind of a reference to the current times in which we live. I seek refuge in Allah from misleading and being misled, from betraying and from being betrayed to ignorance by others. I ask Allah to guide my heart and to guide my tongue. I declare belief in Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. All praise be to Allah, who has created man and has not left him without guidance. He left us with the guidance in the book of Allah and in the example of the message of Allah, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who lived 1400 years ago, and to whom the Quran was revealed. Those hellish slave ships brought Muslims to this country who in many cases knew they'd never again be back in a Muslim land. Many of these Muslims were librarians, they were hafiz, they were teachers, They were doctors. They probably prayed, Rabbi Zala Ilma. They probably wanted more knowledge. They probably prayed that they wanted their children, their offspring, one day to make the Hajj. When the African American descendants of the slaves returns to Mecca, it is a return. I always feel that we are going back to a place where those who brought them here never figured any offspring of yours would ever see that place again. It's important that not only do we teach history, it is important that we teach it to our children. It is important that we understand that the African American did not just go from slavery to the civil rights movement and then all of a sudden get the right to vote. Many amazing teachers. I recommend their readings to all human beings, not just African Americans. Carter G. Woodson, Miseducation of the Negro. Take out Negro, you can put in whatever country you come from, and you'll find out that the same people who did that to us, my people, did it to yours. Chancellor Williams and many others would not let us forget. We can't let our children forget. One of the things that our children must be taught is there is no such thing as honoring the womb that bore you. If you disgrace your wife, if you commit adultery, you don't commit adultery against your wife. It certainly does not affect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it destroys the family unit. You cannot debase a boy's mother and then teach him how to pray. He cannot hear violent outbreaks with the father and then you tell him about reading hadith. These levels of communication were restored by one group, and that was Islam. We can go through history and hear about the Knights of the Round Table. The European never, ever had a chivalrous society. The European never had Knights of the Round Table. The European was never, ever kind to those weaker than himself. He was not that then, he is not that now. So these things we can teach in history, because if we wait for other people to teach our children history, they will learn to hate themselves. They will actually think that these people have something better than Islam to offer. They will go to universities and they will find these wonderful, glorious places of education and learning. They will read philosophies that they didn't even know existed. They'll be introduced to concepts of love and romance, never knowing that these things are the whispers, not good, but it seems so. We as fathers have to teach our children to honor the womb that bore you means I honor your mother. We have brothers who have amazing sisters for wives. Amazing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed them with Muslim wives, and instantly, at a young age, they want a second. Like being given all the diamonds in South Africa, and then saying, but I want the ones in the Congo too. I want them all. These things that Islam restored to the African American, I mention these things because you don't get a chance to explain that the reparations that many African Americans are running around looking for, they'll never ever get financial reparations. Never going to happen. Doesn't matter if you think you deserve it or we have it coming. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala slipped in as only He could. He restored everything that was taken from us and more. Everything was taken and more. All the lands they took from us, we can now visit. We can go back to the lands of our grandfathers, grandmothers. So, brothers and sisters, let us pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides us to learn and know and to love one another. Assalamu alaikum, bismillah. Brothers and sisters, just to put this tale that I tried to weave together with so many different parts, not knowing our history is a problem. We can't be morally apathetic to these things taking place. We can't just respond when it's either a Muslim being killed, or a mosque being bombed, Qurans being attacked. We have to understand our connection to humanity and feel for these parents of these African Americans who are dying at the hands of people who also now are targeting us. When it was just African Americans, many of us, as I say, it just put a little crease in our day, we went on about our business. We have to learn about one another. African American children should know the extraordinary histories of India. They should know the amazing things that took place in Malaysia and Indonesia. African American children, I think, are learning, but they should never just refer to one of the people they deal with as an African. They should take the time to ask the African, what part of Africa are you from? And if the African is enlightened, he'll ask them, what part of the United States do you come from? There's a difference if you come from Georgia or if you come from Detroit. We can share these things that could make us closer. The fathers must teach the children, men and boys and girls, the value of a Muslim woman, a pious woman, a woman who reflects those things that used to be in the West through a calculation. Those of you who are interested in history, you can start the history at 1800 and watch how the fashions changed. Watch how they changed. If you really want to research it, you can go in and see who these designers were. If you look into the film industry, who began to help to shape this fashion industry, what you will find are many of them, Cecil B. DeMille and others. They were not just filmmakers, Freemasons. Cecil B. DeMille, the great filmmaker, was a fraternity brother of J. Edgar Hoover. They had special handshakes, special positions of the mouth, special positions of the head when they met. This is not some haphazard thing that comes together 4 Fridays a month. These people are meeting 7 days a week, 365 days a year, every single minute of every single day, in every single country around this world, under different names of groups, but they're all targeting our children and our wives. The Masjid here, Imam Fatim, Sister Nisa, and Brother Ahmad and others have put together a lecture series that's being developed to bring in a lecturer on a Skype every month. They'll lecture on quantum physics, on publishing. Where will publishing be in 50, 60 years? Will they still be printing books? They'll give these lectures to enlighten us in all these different areas. What would television look like in 50 years? We'll be watching it on a screen. How will this be produced? They're now trying to build a time machine. So we want to have these lecturers come in and do these lectures, but we have to support it and come in when we find out about it, and if at all possible, come in together as a community and look at these things. Listen, ask questions. Get our children to look into the future that's going to be here. Many of us are closer to the grave than we are to high school. So many of these changes we won't be there to see, but you can prepare our young people to see the future that is going to be theirs. When we end with talking about our sisters, when they target our sisters so harshly, and not just in European countries, Turkey at one time banned hijab, Islamic country. This demonstration of piety and inaccessibility, I've always felt that one of the things these hijabs project to those who are flirtatious is, if you're looking for a girlfriend, look past me. They don't like this. They want to be able to approach every woman with improper suggestions, which makes it worse when the improper suggestions come from the Muslim. Well, Al-Asr is one of those things that tells us it's not just non-Muslims who give improper suggestions. We always have to be on guard. So, brothers and sisters, let us pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides us and makes us the parents of offspring who have offspring who are also grateful to Allah. And if that will be comment to Salah.